It's been a rough and bumpy journey for the Tasmanian forestry industry. Years of bitter conflict with conservationists was supposed to end with the signing of a peace deal in 2012. But the story's recently taken another twist, with coalition governments at state and federal level now seeking to reopen forests declared off-limits to logging. It's a move welcomed by some, but by no means all timber-related businesses, as Fiona Breen discovered. A load of blackwood is going through this sawmill at Britton's in Smithton, northwest Tasmania. These logs are from a nearby forest named after this fourth-generation timber working family.
The forests that are supplying our logs have been cut over once, twice and some even three times in the past 100, 150 years. This area was built on the back of a sawmilling businesses, and that's how the population in the district started, or the larger population in the district started.
The timber hasn't changed, but the sawmilling techniques have. The family has spent millions updating machinery.
And that's enabled us to increase our recovery out of the saw logs we get. Interestingly, over that time as well, the grade of the saw log that we do get in the gate has decreased. So by having that better technology, we've been able to maintain recovery and maintain our turnover.
In a time of huge change and challenges in the industry, they invested while many of their smaller counterparts were getting out, paid by government to leave an industry plagued by forest protests and dwindling markets. A 2012 deal between the big conservation groups, unions and industry set aside thousands of hectares of former logging areas for protection, in exchange for an end to decades of protests. The Tasmanian Forest Peace Deal was signed after months of laborious negotiations. At the coalface in Smithton, Sean Britton's attitude was to buckle down and ride out any changes.
And we take the approach, it's business as normal. We tell all our people that we're here for the long term. We keep investing in our business all through the last few years when things have been a bit difficult.
Britton's is building its business to withstand change. While specialising in native timbers, they're also importing hardwood from around the world, promoting themselves as a one-stop shop for developers.
So we do lots of big projects around the country, whether it's things like casinos. We're currently fitting out a large tower in South Bank in Melbourne with imported timber. So there's lots of large projects around the country that we supply the timber into.
But the limits of their flexibility is being challenged. A new state Liberal government is dismantling the peace deal and opening up hundreds of thousands of hectares due for protection to logging in 2020. At the international level, the federal coalition government has applied to have a parcel of World Heritage land delisted.
There's always an amount of risk and uncertainty in the business that we're in. Our industry has been through a lot in the last 20 or 30 years. They are the government of the day, and if they make a decision, we have to run with it. No matter whether it's a Liberal government or a Labor government, we have to follow our government's lead. In contrast to Britton's, Malaysian-owned timber company Taran
publicly urged the new coalition governments to leave Tasmania's Forest Peace Agreement alone. As the threat to the agreement loomed, Taran signed its own deal with conservation groups, recommitting the company to the agreed supply areas in return for their support in the market.
We would see no change in that wood supply, and we'll continue to work closely with the environmental groups. We're continuing to meet with them on a regular basis. They've just recently been in Tokyo, in the markets, briefing customers again about the nature of what's happening in Tasmania, and we intend to keep working with those environmental groups as part of our forward plan.
Despite the political uncertainty, Taran is getting on with business. Logs continue to roll into this Smithton plant, where they're peeled like apples and transformed into thin sheets of veneer. This operation is, however, only running at 50% capacity. Taran lost a lot of market share at the height of the forest protests, when conservationists targeted their Japanese buyers, accusing Taran of using old-growth wood. It's hoping a new plywood plant will turn things around.
And the style of plywood product that we're looking to make is really taking all of this sort of thin veneer and then laminating it and back up, gluing it back up with a press, and then producing with a very fine, very clear film a really, strong, hard and very durable surface for the plywood product.
So this is value adding what you're doing in the big shed?
Absolutely. It's taking it that next step. So it's taking what we've got here in veneer leaf and taking this veneer leaf and taking it to the next stage of value adding here in Tasmania.
Taran is counting on business picking up and is looking for new log suppliers to replace the 40% it gave up for cash as part of the Forest Peace deal. It's likely forests on private farmland will fill the gap.
This is the sort of log style and size that, there's quite a lot of this along the northwest coast and northern Tasmania on private forest land. So we'll be looking to get a dialogue going with farmers as we start to progressively rebuild the business to see if we can't secure some of the wood from private forests.
Andrew Denman's boat building workshop is a stark contrast to the big timber mills, as is his attitude to the Forest Peace deal. Its dismantling is a relief.
A lot of the millers haven't had any celery top pine for quite a few years since the TFA started. There was a moratorium on going into old growth areas, which essentially chopped off the boat building industry's supply of timber.
Like most specialty timber workers, boat builders use traditional hand tools for a lot of their work. Their timbers of choice are Tasmania's rarer woods.
In 2009, a study called the Woodcraft Study that looked at the industry found that celery top pine was the most used boat building timber in Tasmania at 42%. That was closely followed by Huon pine at 28%. We also use Kingbilly pine, and then for our internal fit-outs, we also use Tasmanian blackwood. We've used myrtle, blackheart sassafras sometimes for fit-out. It really depends on what the clients want.
There are existing supplies of timbers like celery top pine at some of the big sawmills, but prices have skyrocketed out of reach of many specialty timber users. That's why Andrew Denman hopes the coalition government is successful in its bid to have a portion of World Heritage land delisted.
Used to have quite a good stockpile in an attempt to future-proof the business. In 2010, the announcement of the Special Timbers Strategy, which guaranteed a supply to industry in perpetuity, we sold down our stockpile and invested in our business. We put on a new apprentice and bought some more machinery. But unfortunately, only 6 months after that was released, we started well, the whole TFA process started and we had a moratorium on logging.
Every boat in this shed looks like a work of art and buyers pay accordingly. They're carefully handcrafted over months and sometimes years from specialty timbers that are getting harder to find. Forestry Tasmania is using helicopters to help map out the location of future supplies of some of these timbers.
Because specialty timbers aren't all the same age profile when you cut them down, it's important to understand not only where the timber is, but what the age profile of those areas are. For example, with celery top pine, to get a good saw log, you need a tree that's around 400 years old. So when we're looking at what is the sustainable yield, we need to have a look at the age profile, because any native forest area will have trees from small seedlings all the way through to trees that are about to fall over because they're dead.
Most specialty timber users don't want their logs from clearfelled forests. They want them selectively harvested, but that's not likely to be easy or cheap. There's few existing roads into old-growth forests. It's prompted talk of some extreme harvesting options, like heli logging and even balloon logging. Whichever way the timber is retrieved, the cost of these boats is likely to rise. It's hoped their popularity will continue to rise as well.
People love the fact that we are high value adding very small quantities of timber that are generally selectively harvested, and it's meant to be the pinnacle of the timber industry. It's not wood chip, it's not hardwood saw log or building framing material, actually making functional art, and that is generally accepted by the public.